And whenever this message reaches you. Today is December 24th, known as Christmas Eve. I have the pleasure of speaking to Brian Ward, aka Dr. Ward. Don't get the two twisted. He is Brian Ward way longer than he was Dr. Ward. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing good, Will. How are you?
I'm doing well. I enjoy the perspective of I, labels do matter to people being a doctor or not being a doctor, and I appreciate that you don't need to have the title on because there's this hierarchy of conversation where some people feel like they come out from superiority. So I appreciate coming down to the layman's term of Brian Ward.
Man, I have been known as Brian Ward a lot longer than I have Dr. Ward, and I don't even when my patients and stuff come in, I introduce myself as Brian, and then I have to clarify, hey, I'm Dr. Ward. Just call me Brian. I don't get too hung up on titles. Just because I guess from where I come from, I don't care how many letters you put behind your name or anything like that. You're no better than the person standing beside you, and you're no better than the people that work with you or sitting in your chair. You know, the some of the better people I've ever known in my entire life, and some of the most intelligent people I've ever known in my life are guys that never graduated high school, that don't have have very little wealth or whatever, but we're just hardworking people, and they're just some of the best people I've ever known. They have no letters, no titles, no income or anything like that. So just to throw a couple of letters behind somebody's name or throw some wealth inside their bank account and think there's some type of superiority, that's just not true.
Well, I appreciate that. It goes back to the conversation I used to have sometimes. It's like, would you rather have one of those rednecks or would you rather have a Wall Street journalist under an Armageddon? And almost 10 out of 10 times, we'd rather have a person from the South because they could be able to build you anything out of duct tape and a few screws.
I'll take the redneck all day long. As you can hear from my voice, I resemble that remark quite a bit. And I was, and I am a doctor now. I'm known well in this area, and I've got two dental practices, and they're pretty big. We're about 50 to 60 employees, and it says a lot from where I came from. But before that, I moved houses for 20 years. My main line of business was I repossessed mobile homes, single wides, double wides, modulars, and stuff for finance companies, and I did that all over the eastern seaboard and even some work, out west. But did that for a long time, and so yeah, just to get caught up on labels and stuff, that's just not me. I'm a truck driver, man, and a dentist at the same.
So I had the privilege of working with the psychiatrist that was on my team. She went by Mutt, and the
Mhm.
MUTT. She was a truck driver,
Yeah,
and she something happened with her brother, and then she said, "Screw this! I'm becoming a psychiatrist."
yeah.
And it's usually you don't hear people being like, "Well, I'm done driving trucks. I'm going to go get my doctorate degree."
Well, I'm a I'm a long convoluted story. I'm a high school dropout. I don't have a high school diploma. I quit school when I was 15 years old. And legally quit in the state of North Carolina when I was 16. I don't have a high school diploma. In the state of North Carolina, when I decided to go back to school, which was in my probably my mid 20s, had a great business going. My own business with my wife. We had about 8 full-time employees. We had a lot of contractors working for us. Had about 3 big trucks on the road, and of course that's what we were doing. We had a sales center, some trailer parks where we rented homes, and in our like I said, our main line of business was repossessing houses for finance companies. The But I did that for a long time. When I decided to go back to school, I was still doing that. But the state of North Carolina had a program for what was called non-traditional students. I don't know if that still exists, but you could go walk into any public university in the state of North Carolina without anything, without a high school diploma, without ATs or anything, as long as you were over the age of 24 years old. You were just put on a GPA probation, so your GPA had to stay like over a 2.5 during your entire college career. You'd be automatically dismissed. And so that's what I did. I think I was 24, 25. I started taking I quit school at the end of my 8th grade year, beginning of ninth grade, and then I started taking classes at East Carolina University, the diplomas you see behind me, which was a local university, and started taking classes there just little bit by little bit. I also took classes at some community colleges, and over about 6 years, still going to work every day. Um, I put together a pre med degree, and so I graduated with a pre med degree. Um, did that, kind of scratched that itch. I always felt this thing, just always this little bugging, you know, echo inside my head, about being a high school dropout, about quitting school, wanting to accomplish more. My wife, she was always super supportive. She was always like, "Well, just go back," like it wasn't a big deal. I was scared to death, but she graduated as an accountant, so she was used to the school environment. But after I did that, I had my pre med degree, and I just went back still the whole time, just driving truck and doing what I was doing. Had a successful business doing that. And I just, there's nothing more dangerous than a man alone with his thoughts. And I would sit there and think, what else could I do? I thought about medical school. So I started taking what's called the MCATs entry exam for medical schools. And I actually got accepted for an interview at Brody School of Medicine, which is here in Eastern North Carolina. And a couple of days, a couple of weeks before that interview was set, I started kind of freaking out. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? I've got a great, business here. And I just called and I canceled that interview and then went again some time and started looking into other things I could do. And dentistry, look, people in my family didn't even brush their teeth. I had no doctors in my family, nothing like that. I looked at dental as a total economical perspective. I could still own my own business. I could work with my hands. The government wasn't too involved in it at the time. And so then I applied and I got into dental school, and here we are. That was I graduated in 2016, somewhere around that. So we're looking at 10, 11 years ago. And now I'm owner with my wife. I'm not going to take anything away from her. She's a very intelligent woman and she's helped me every step of the way. But, now we own two dental practices. We have five dentists that work for us, and we're about 54 to 55 employees. That changes every single day. But, so that's a pretty big step from a guy who, dropped out of school and was toting cement blocks and dragging axles and tires up underneath houses and taking homes from people. So I don't look at myself as anything special at all. I don't even looking back, I have to say it like when I'm sitting here saying that to you, all the things that I've done, that makes me evaluate it and look at it as in a totality. But I don't think of myself as anything special. I've done everything wrong you can do in life. I've made every mistake there is. If there's That's just one thing I want to be very clear. When I do a podcast, when I talk about the book, when I go to community colleges or I talk to recovery centers or something, I want to be very clear that I do not stand on any type of moral high ground, and I can fall today with the right pressure applied. We all can. I've made every mistake you can make as a human being, and we'll get into why that is and things that hopefully other people can do to avert that and not make them in their in their same life.
So I wanted to go back a bit further than you dropping out in school. You
Mm.
grew up in, you said, on the western part of North Carolina. But
Grew
how
up
was it? Go ahead.
grew up on the east. I've lived in the western part, so you're right about that for a little while. But I grew up in the East Coast. Real. If anybody's aware of North Carolina, I'm about all of Eastern North Carolina is covered with water. It doesn't matter where you're at, but I'm about 45 minutes to an hour from that actual ocean, and we're on what we call the Inner Banks. So I grew up in a little town called Chocowinity, and that's a Native American name. It's right outside of Greenville, North Carolina, and right beside Little Washington, North Carolina.
So how was your childhood when you grew up? What was like the I know you said that your brothers, they actually had some adverse. How was it growing up as you and making the decision to get to the point of dropping out of high school?
Man, I am the probably the typical, sad but true, the typical American family. Look, I grew up in a household with say grew up. It was my dad, my mom, my older sister, and my older brother. Older sister by 5 years, older brother by three. My dad worked hard. He was a really good salesman. He did really well. So we were not poor people by no means. Now everybody in Eastern North Carolina in this area is poor compared to other parts of the country. It's like growing up in rural Mississippi. Some people just have a little nicer house than the guy beside them, but nobody's really wealthy. But we lived in a nice house, had decent cars. I was the kid that would have the motorcycle at Christmas time. But that was very short lived. My parents split up very early. I was probably about 8 to 9 years old when my parents split up, and of course, it was turmoil for years before that. Dad not in the house and stuff, and neither one was. They were both at fault. I say this I say this looking back at things that I've done and made some of the same mistakes. They were selfish people. They were selfish in a me type attitude. I this is not a good spot, and sometimes people do need to split up. But anyway, I think that they could have made a lot of different choices, as we all could. I'm not bashing my parents. My dad's passed away. My mom's still alive. The We grew up in a decent household, but then when they started fussing, things started falling to pieces. My sister was older. She dropped out of high school because there was just no parental guidance around. She dropped out about 16 years old. A girl, I always say, guys are what they are, but a girl without a dad in the house and without good parental environment, that's a disaster because the wolves are sitting there waiting at the door for her, and that happened. My brother, he was always in trouble. He was in trouble even when times were good. He was just in trouble all the time. He was the guy that the police would bring him home where he set the damn woods on fire, where he'd take off on a motorcycle and be gone for 3 or 4 days. He was just always into something, and he would have been a handful for even a solid family, for a solid put together household. But anyway, when my parents split up, I went with my mom. I was the littlest, so went with my mom. My brother, my sister stayed with my dad, and it was just pure. I can imagine for teenagers, it was probably heaven. No parental guidance, do whatever. My dad worked, came home, made sure there was some food in the house, and that was about it. So both of them wound up dropping out of school. Of course, you get the picture. Cigarettes, marijuana, alcohol, every drug under the sun started to creep in. Early pregnancies, trouble with the law. That was where that was their world. And my brother really spiraled out of control to some pretty drastic. So if you anybody's interested in my book, it'll have it all in detail. But he got into some drastic trouble with the law and has his entire life. And um, I'm talking about major stuff. So anyway, the me on the other hand, I was in, my mom and I moved into a single wide trailer in another part of the area, and she worked as a secretary, and just really no print. My I was raised at that point by Super Mario Brothers and MTV. And, I was, by the time I was 12 years old, I was smoking cigarettes, hanging out with people that were older than me. One thing left to another. Of course, marijuana was just everywhere back then. And I would go to work in the summers. I could work with my dad was in the mobile home business, so I could work with some of his contractors to make extra money. I wasn't around my dad a lot, but I could work with those contractors. And so by the time I was 14, 15 years old back then, I mean, we're talking about a long time ago, I was making $50, $75 a day, and I didn't have anybody tell me not to, and I didn't see any need for school. So I dropped out of school as fast as I could just so I could work full time. And then, you know, nothing more, the wisdom of a 16-year-old, with money in his pocket. And then it turned into, cocaine. And my downfall at one point was crack cocaine and the drinking and, I guess you would call it partying. Um, that all started to transpire in my life. I was still working. For some reason, I've always had to drive to go to work every day, but I was working, but I was doing things I shouldn't. And then I met my wife, who's older than me by about 3 or 4 years. And I'll say we because it's not a she. We got pregnant, and I was 17, 18 years old at the time, and I was still screwing up, doing things wrong. But I moved out of living with any of my parents when I was 16, so I was living on my own, making decent enough money to be able to do that. It's lucky I survived and didn't blow every dime that I had. But we had twins, and they were premature. They were born at 28 weeks, and one passed away just a couple of days after childbirth, and the other survived, and he is my surviving son today. But the one that passed away had what's called a truncus arteriosus, and what that means is that your oxygenated blood and your deoxygenated blood are mixing in your heart. So that's why he passed away. He had a surgery done. He was a little bitty thing. There was this little toy back in the 90s called a glowworm, and that's what they reminded me of. They were just, I think he weighed like less than 3 pounds. Both of them did. Both of them were about right around 3 pounds. But my son who passed away, he was flown to Duke Hospital, and he was the smallest child on record to ever have this heart surgery, and he made it through the surgery, but he passed away coming off the anesthesia. It was a tiny thing. Later on, and this is crazy, but when I was in dental school, your first 2 years is just about like being in medical school. As a matter of fact, in East Carolina, you share a lot of classes with medical students. And I actually read about my son in a cardiology journal because he was still the smallest child on record to ever have that surgery when I was in school. But back up, he passed away. We went back to the hospital in Greenville, where my other son was in the NICU, and he was there for 3 months. And my wife never walked out of that door. She stayed in there with him the entire time. She never left the hospital. I would work during the day, and I would go there a lot of nights and sleep in waiting rooms and stuff. And he made it. He's got a condition called 22q. That's about 1 in 8,000 births. Matter of fact, any proceeds from the books or any proceeds I get, that's the foundation that the money goes to. But he had that. He's 30. He's 30 years old now, and he's mentally ill. He's schizophrenic. He's had a lot of problems, through his life. So he's with me and his mom, all the time. He'll be with us in our household, and we'll be taking care of him, till we all don't no longer exist on this planet. But as far as me starting to think about straightening myself up in that NICU, my wife, I walked in there one night, and it's a little hard for me to talk about, but I walked in there one night, and when you first walk in, there was this great big mirror and these sinks and stuff, and you had to scrub up, as you can imagine, before you could walk in the NICU, and you had to gown up and all this. And, I did all that, and I walked in, and my wife was sitting there holding my son, who was being fed through feeding tubes. And you're talking about, a kid that big. And I went in, and I started fussing at her about some money. I was like, I need this or this, for the house. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I just remember I was being an ass, and I was being an ass. And my whole goal was to leave her, go home, probably stop and buy some drugs, on the way home, do something, before I go to bed, get up the next day, go to work. Just didn't have any money. And I just remember fussing, and I was just being a punk. And I walked out, and I can remember standing back in front of that mirror, disrobing in this huge mirror. And I just looked at myself for a second, and I was like, man, you are the biggest piece of shit on the planet. Here goes your, 20-year-old wife sitting here, just lost a child, and here you are just being a piece of crap, trying to get some money so you can go buy, so you can go get high. And that wasn't my, it wasn't like a on off switch, but I can remember that. I can hardly remember what I had for breakfast this morning, but I can remember that. And so it was, I tell people, like, my change was tragedy to avert tragedy. It took, it took that type of stuff, for me to finally wake up and say, hey, this girl didn't ask for you to get her pregnant. That kid in that NICU did not ask to be here. And, you're it. What are you going to be? Are you going to be the piece of crap that, just runs off and leaves them to whatever? Or are you going to stand up and, do the best that you can to support them? And my life from that point on, to a default, this is, please don't follow my footsteps, but to a default, my life is, it's been a rat race for not money, not success, but stability. What have I got to do to make sure that my life is set up in a way that where my son will have what he needs till the day that he dies, that me and my wife will be okay, till the day we die. And so that was really the start of it all. That was a lot of my drive, of why, making sure my housing business was successful, making sure that, the drive to constantly go to school and study at night and things like that, so I could do something more in the future. Um, there's being where I come from. When you're younger, and a lot of times people would like to vilify people that are successful. People, if you see somebody as a CEO of a company doing really well, it's easy to take that aspect of, rich piece of crap. You know what I mean? They have no idea how life is or whatever. The reality is, most people that you see that are doctors, that are, CEOs, that are doing really well in life, they had to work their tail off to get there. America's not full of old money. It's not like England. It's not like France and places like that. There's not a lot of old money here. So if you see somebody successful, um, most of the time they had to make it. Now their path could have been a little easier. I'm not going to take that away, but to, you know being successful, working your tail off to create a better life for yourself and to have nicer cars and nicer houses and things like that, is, don't ever think of that as a bad thing. And because the more successful that you are, the more stable you make your own family, the more opportunity you give yourself to help others. And if you are in a position to be able to employ people, manage people, you've put yourself in that situation to make their lives better. And if you have any sense and if you are a decent mentor, you put yourself in a situation to where you can talk to people and help them. So, just kind of getting that out of the way, to vilify success and to go after success, whatever you want to call that, that that is not a bad thing. You're not going to do anything. Now you can turn it into a disaster, but you're not going to do anything but help yourself, help your family, and help those that are around
So the question I get for you, or no, the question I have for you is that when you started writing this book, Bull Shark, and you started to reflect on your childhood, you started to reflect on your life, what brought you here. What was the emotions that were risen up from actually writing it down on paper?
you. Well, it was actually it was very, I guess you would call it, it was scary, to put all this down. If the book, it, one thing I said when I decided to write it, and I was approached about writing a book. I didn't really wake up one day and say, "Hey, I'm going to go write a book." I was approached by some people that knew me, that, had written books, that knew some publishers, and they were like, "Your story, you should consider writing a book, or putting it out there, because you could help people." And I agreed to some extent, but to sit there and to air all your dirty laundry, to talk about, I mean, I'm a doctor in this area that a lot of people look up to me, and I have patients that come to see me, to sit here and spill it out. Hey, I'm a high school dropout. Hey, I, used to use drugs. Hey, my family was like this. That's nothing you want to put on a billboard, or, that's not what you greet people with. So it was very scary. But I started out the process of writing the book in help with um, the publisher of doing interviews and things like that, just trying to make sure there was a story there. So I guess a purpose of writing the book, man, you know things that happen to you when you're a child, or they really do shape you, and they shape the way that you think. And if my big thing is, I was the kid that laid inside of his bed at night with his parents screaming and hollering, with his, that was getting drug out in the middle of the night to go sleep somewhere else, because they were fighting or whatever, or didn't see their dad around a whole lot. And look, a lot of people go through this. I'm not sitting here trying to paint that I had the worst childhood in the world. It's not like I was starving to death. But if there is, and there is that little girl who's, you know, 8 years old, and she's going to bed at night with her parents screaming, or, a dad that drinks too much, or a mom that's on opioids, or you got different men or drugs or something coming in and out of the house all the time. That's everywhere. I can walk a mile from here and find it. You can too. I don't care where you're at. But I want that little girl. I don't know how to get this message to her, but I want her to know, or that boy that's in that situation, or that mom that's got the husband in the house, or the boyfriend in the house that's not helping out. Or if there's a guy that's sitting there this morning and saying, "Man, I have, ruined my friggin' life. I've ruined everything around me. I have stole from everybody there is, and it's just I'm useless." And I want all of those people to know you can make a change, man. The only person standing in your way to make life better for yourself and for those around you is yourself. You're the only person standing in your way. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be. It's not. Nothing's going to be handed to you. It's going to take small steps, and it's going to take a lot of time. But you can make a difference. And I'm not people out there with children. I want their children to know that despite how shitty of a parent you are, their life can actually be better. They can make a change. We're lucky. I've been to a lot of third world countries, doing dental mission work. I've seen places in interior Mexico, interior Dominican Republic, Haiti, and stuff where a person life is horrible and they really can't make a change. They don't have that ability to wake up because of the way the government's set up, the way the hierarchy is, the way they can't get out of that country. They can't say, "Hey, life is bad, and I'm going to do better." Very difficult situation. I don't care if you're sleeping on the streets in America. If you put your determination to it, there's avenues, there's paths, there's facilities, there are things set up for you to make a better way. We're very lucky to live in this country. It's not perfect by no means, but that I think that's the biggest part of this book, is just to say, hey, here goes a guy again, made all the mistakes in the world. I've done all the things wrong, which I think hopefully makes me relatable to somebody in a bad situation. But if I can do it, it's one of those, you hear this all the time. If I can do it, you can do it. You just got to start making it happen. And and a big thing that I'm a believer in is every decision we make, from me being on this podcast today, from you deciding to get a cup of coffee at a certain time, deciding to get out of bed, that stuff echoes through time. And if you have a child or something at the house, and if you're doing drugs, if you're an alcoholic, if you're not trying to support your family very well, if you're being mentally abusive, man, that stuff echoes through time. If you take a guy who's a this is a good example. My wife's my mom's dad, my grandfather, was a bad alcoholic. When my mom grew up very poor, and when her dad would come home, a lot of times her older brother would have to hide behind the door and would hit him with like a bottle or something if he was drunk, because he'd come inside the house and be abusive. Well, that was my granddad. So my mom grew up in a household seeing that. My uncle, who was a good guy. He was in the National Guard, and he owned a few businesses in the area. Later on in life, he wound up committing suicide. He committed suicide, left three kids behind. That was my first cousin. One of those was my first cousin. Her name was Connie. Well, Connie in her 40s or 50s, and we're talking about a college educated, beautiful girl walks out to her dad's tombstone and shoots herself. So here you got alcohol abuse leading to a screwed up son, to him doing something drastic, to his daughter seeing it. Times get tough. Hey, daddy did this. This was a way out. She shoots herself. My mom in the same household, when she met my father, she was actually in love with another guy. But my grandmother, always pushed her towards my dad. Said, "Hey, my dad's name was Richard." She said, "Hey, Richard will provide a better life for you. He'll get you out of this poverty," and he did. And but there, my mom made a decision, and my grandmother influenced it. A decision that thinking that material things will make you happier as a person, and they won't. I don't care how much money you got. It's not going to do anything about whatever we want to define happiness as. So there's my point to people is when you make a decision today of being an alcoholic in your house, or if you say, "Hey, life's terrible, the world's going to be better off without me, and I'm just going to go shoot myself. I'm going to end it with a revolver." What do you Stop being so damn selfish and look at everything, that trickle effect that's coming behind you? Because if you have kids, they're going to see it, and they're never going to get over it. And let me tell you what they're going to do. They're going to drag it over to their children if they have children in the past. This stuff's going to echo for generations, even if you don't have kids. And you say, "Well, there's nobody out there that cares." You're not on this earth without a mom and dad. I guarantee there's some family out there. There's somebody out there that knows you that's going to see it, and then you're putting that burden on them. It's we as human beings is hard because we're human and we sin is what we do. But at some point we have to decide. You know, I need to suppress. We have to decide to suppress these innate sinful natures that we have. And I ain't saying being perfect, but just thinking about, hey, if I do this, if I am like this, what is it going to do to other people? And I don't know how to tell people to get there, but that's the only way that this world's ever going to start making changes. And the changes are going to have to come in the household. It's going to come within you to start trying to make a better life for you and for those around you.
So, Brian, when I hear this, is that I think about how my past, my father was, my grandfather was, my great grandfather was, and my grandfather was a Vietnam vet, grandfather World War II, great grandfather World War One. A lot of times, our parents are behaving because of the way that things were shown to them, or this is how they were able to either escape reality. And a lot of what I've been doing with this podcast is hopefully creating that narrative or trying to be disruptive, because individuals unfortunately have been so stuck or so programmed or been around the same people that they haven't had those role models that say, "Hey, you know what, I got you, let's have a conversation,
Yeah.
let's move forward." And it's really difficult because you've been plagued with your own trials and tribulations, and at the same time, like, and I'm proud of you for be able to get out of this. And like, as we
Thank
were
you.
talking before we jumped on here, was that you raise a charity, you have a charity event that you actually donate the proceeds to help out people with recovering from addiction. And that is it's a very noble cause. You're wanting to help out, wanting to give. And what I also wanted to share with you, so the person says, "As the mom of a special needs child, I understand the drive to make sure your son is taken care of, even after you're gone. It's a lonely road, but worth it. The goal is stability."
It is. It is. When I wrote this book, it's a short read. The book was two times the size of it, and it was actually a lot grittier. But the publisher at the time was looking for something a shorter read. I think it's 400 or 500 pages. It's not that much. And then they actually wanted to tone it down. They said this was too raw. This was too gritty. And so you'll find that hilarious when you read it. It's like we actually toned down some of the stuff that went on in my life and stuff, and tried to make it more palatable for the reader. But the hardest chapter to talk to your viewer, the hardest chapter I wrote was about my son. It's called we call it 23. I called it 23 pairs, just referring to the chromosomes that we have and DNA sequences. And that was super hard, man. Mental illness, having a child that's got a genetic disorder, and you know, mental illness is it's a hell. It is a pure hell on earth, and it's a hell for the parents. It's a hell for any providers, and you constantly have to remind yourself every day, because you can get into this. What about me? Like, my God, how why did I get this deck of cards? When do I get a relief? And I go through that crap all the time. And your viewer is is probably shaking their head absolutely right now. But you have to remind yourself that the person that's got the illness, has it worse than you. They're the ones that are suffering the most, even though that's hard to see. We deal with this stuff. My son is he has severe psychosis. He's on every medication under the sun, and has been for many years. And so this is just a daily struggle for me and his mom. And he's in a he's in a weird situation because of his genetic disorder coupled with his mental illness. There's no places or facilities or anything to send him, because nobody can really handle him. So it's all done inside the home. But you, mental illness is horrible, and that can be from mental illness as far as somebody that is an induced mental illness of severe depression, through drug use, through genetics, born with a genetic disorder, through past trauma. You talked about, just a second ago, you were talking about people seeing life or being put in circumstances and seeing a hard way out of it, and a hard way to move forward. When I moved houses and repossessed houses for 20 years, I pulled up in the mobile home parks. I wasn't going to the nice parts of town. I was going to the worst places. I was going into areas, where most of it was, most people lose their homes because of drug use, because they're just in lower income areas, whatever, divorce. Um, but we'd go into these areas, and just over time, you realize that you got a child, just to take for a second, and take a child that's a crack house, or sells heroin out of it. And you put a little kid in it. Well, if that kid's raised in that environment, that's all they know. That they don't know anything different. So, how can you not think that that is normal? If your mom and dad are selling rock on the side or something like that, and they see people coming up to the house all the time, or they see their dad or mom in there cooking up meth or something, and you're over there with your little toy tractor or your doll baby, and you're getting ice cream in the afternoon. This is life. This is what it is. So when I tell people, your viewer that has a special needs child, when I'm talking to the person that is saying, you know, hey, I live in one of these trailers and parks, and things are just not good here. I'm My reason of pointing that out is I'm not naive. I see the difficulty in getting yourself out of those situations, and I also see the psychological side of it, of that it's been ingrained in you, from being a small child, that this is just how life is. And I don't know how to break that spell and let you know that it's not, but it is not. It is not. You can be the person that makes a change. And to your viewer that's got a special needs kid, man, my heart goes out to you. That's heartbreaking, and God bless you. And just, I don't know where your payment's going to come back in life. I don't know that you get repaid for doing the best you can for that child for your whole life. I don't know that it comes in this life, but there's got to be something for you, and hopefully God's there with you.
Yeah, it's you brought up a multitude of different areas where it was the one area that I wanted to to fixate on is if you grow up in a household or you grow up in a community, this is what you see, this is what you know, this is familiar to us.
Yeah.
And big, like somebody said there too, was generational curses. And it's hard to break away from a generational curse. So where I live in Billings, Montana. It's not that far away from the Crow Agency, which is a reservation over here.
Yep.
And the the thing that I've learned about it is that when people start healing, they have to change up their environment, because if they continue being around the same people, they're going to go back to the same ways. Just like the saying says, if you know 5 millionaires, you're more likely to be the six. If you hang around 5 millionaires, you're more likely to be the six. If you hang around five meth heads, you're more likely to be the six. And
That's it.
and when you are actually starting to change and you're starting to heal, the part that a lot of people don't talk about is that lonely part. That part of where you are now moving from one part to the next in that void of actually learning who you are. It sounded like you had a good woman by your side that helped kind of bridge that a bit. Um, Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got to give my wife, we've had our problems too, but I've got to give her just all the credit in the world. I did. I was lucky in her that she tolerated me, as long as that she did, and then her support. She's always been the person. If I decide to do anything, she's never been a, hey, we can't do that. I mean, she's always been a, you can. Um, and I had a little bit of that in me too. I wasn't, I make it out like my raising was terrible, but somehow I got this, and I'm a firm believer that you can do anything in the world you want as long as you're willing to work hard enough at it. I'm a believer in that. It'd be hard to beat that out of me. But as far as talking about people have to change their environments and this is their norm, that's right. I mean, I've got a photo at my house. It's an old Polaroid, and it was my 8 year birthday party, and there is five guys standing on a trampoline, and I'm in the center, and I'm the only guy, and I just turned 50. I'm the only guy in that photo that's alive. All the rest of them have died. Most of them in their later 30s to around 40. So this is not like a kid doing an overdose at 18 years old. These are grown adults with families. Every one of them have died of overdoses. Of course, the opioid crisis here in Eastern North Carolina is eat up, just like everywhere else in the world. Fentanyl, heroin. You can get any drug you want anywhere in the world. It's not hard to do. Um, but I'm the only one alive. But that I did have to when I decided to, to start making a change or at least start lending myself to that. I did have to stop hanging out with some of the people I had hung. And actually, I do have to give a lot of my people I worked with when I was younger and friends that I had at the time. They saw, and I think people will do this. They'll see that change in you. They'll see that little bit of change, and I do think that deep down they will respect it. Now, does that mean that you can go out, on Friday nights with them, or that you can go hang out with them when they're sitting around? If you're inside of a room with about five guys, like you said, doing meth, there's a good chance you're going to do it. You can't put yourself in those environments. But when you see those people and they know where you're coming from, I honestly, even people that were using it every single day, I honestly saw nothing but respect from them. And they did a good job of saying, hey, Brian's heading in a different direction. He's starting to prove himself. So when I was around him, none of that stuff would come out. They would kind of hide it from me. I felt like an outcast, like you said, that lonely feeling. I'd walk into a room with my friends that I hadn't been around in a year or two, and it was like everybody's pushing the stuff up underneath the couch or putting it in their pocket or just acting different. Or one or two of them be like, "Hey man, I gotta go. I gotta get out of here." Things. So it is lonely. But it is what it is. I mean, is that the how's that, if that's the companionship that you're having, how's that working out for you? Well, obviously it's probably not working out too well.
But you know what I hear from your buddies is that they're like, I really love Brian. Like they don't say it like that, and like it's not even saying that he's uppity. It's like, yo, we gotta get this shit away from him. We gotta keep this stuff away. We want to see him succeed, but at the same time, both parties are like rejecting each other at this point without even realizing it. It's like, well, is Brian too good for us? No, Brian is on a different path. I want to see him succeed. Like, what brings back to me is that Goodwill Hunting. What are you chewing? I'm so sorry, my dog.
You
Um,
good?
it's it's like Goodwill Hunting, where Ben Affleck goes to, we call it Will in the show, in the movie. He goes, my favorite part about the day is when I come up and knock on your door, and I wait for a few moments, hoping that you're not answering the door,
Yeah,
and you just got up and left,
yeah,
and you knew he really loved Will, or well, can't even think of his name right now, Matt Damon, and he really cared about him. He wanted to see him succeed, but at the same time, he was like, I would love for you to just live your life. I love you being part of my life, but this is a stepping stone. This is a change. This is a an area that you got to move on. And I also wanted to share too, the individual that was actually saying that, she said, breaking those generational curses. I do live in a trailer park for now, but I'm looking to buy a house. And life is the reward. I have had been a better person every single day. He needs me to be the best version of myself. And one of the things that that person's saying is that her and I have spoke about, where Carl Jung says, if you really love people, you be the best version of yourself for them.
absolutely. Well, you give people, I think you give people hope. I think in the movie Goodwill Hunting, you give people that view through a lens that, man, this person's doing this. This is happening. This doesn't have to be. And most of the time, if you're in a situation where people are not, um, they're not aspiring to be the best version they can of themselves, whether, and I'll always go back and I'll say things like drug use, those environments, because that's just kind of the environment I come from. But whatever that is, even if that's just stagnant life of not trying to prepare or not trying to better themselves, the you know those people, most of them want that internally for themselves, and when they see that, now some of them can just totally reject it and just say, whatever, guy thinks he's too good, don't want to be around us no more, whatever. And that's just childish outlashing is all that is. But those all those people, even they could be sitting there hitting a bowl, and probably deep down they're like, man, I wish I had that drive in me. I wish I could do it. So you are motivating people. Just being, Carl Jung was right. The best thing that you can do, that's, I've never heard that, and that's absolutely wonderful. Um, my favorite quote comes from, and this is a great book. If none of your listeners have ever read this, it's called Man's Search for Meaning, and it's by Viktor Frankl. And I think, other than maybe the Bible, that's probably one of the best books ever written. And it's so amazing. That's a really short read too, about the thickness of mind. And he wrote that book in 6 days, coming out of a concentration camp. But my favorite quote is, and I'll get this wrong, but it's live today as if you've lived before, and you're about to make the exact same mistakes that you made then. And that is just, see the mistake that you're about to make, and correct it, because this is not going anywhere good. Go ahead and nip that in the bud. But it's a great book, and that's one of my favorite quotes.
That is an amazing book. So when I started working for the VA, and within the first few months, I got a chance to be in existential psychology cohort, and we referenced his book quite a bit. And one of the parts that I like, I don't think they really talk about it in the book, but he talks about his own personal accounts, where I'll use only three examples, and you can get the gist of it. People are walking on the way to the chambers, to the gas chambers. You can hold your head up high as actually giving people hope. You could try to fight the person, knowing that you're going to die that way. You can hold your head in shame.
Yeah,
And the outcome is going to be the same as where you're going to die. And it's when you are living your life, or you're having the chance to meet the problem or the situation, how are you going to hold your head? Because it's not always about the situation that you endured, but it's about how are you about to approach it, how you're going to start walking away from it, how you're going to start healing from it. And the reason I wanted to reach out to you, Brian, is that when I read your snippet that you sent in, I thought it was absolutely amazing. And then when I had a chance to talk to you about 1 week ago today, it was, I was hearing, I'm like, wow, this guy has had, I don't want to say shit luck. He has showed a lot of gritty and resilience. Like Angela Duckworth in her book, she talks about grit and what makes people gritty. But you continuously giving back that servitude type mindset to help other people look at it from a different angle. And I think that keeps you more on the healing path. I'm sorry, you're about to say something.
Now, well, I have found, I don't know if this is for everybody, but helping other people. Sometimes we can't fix ourselves, and I don't. I view myself as a broken person. I do. It's just maybe I need to take some of my own advice when I tell people, hey, just because you grew up a certain way doesn't mean you had, something I say is, you know, where you come from does not have to be where you're going. And I believe that, but even I got a little bit of that tangled up inside of me too. Maybe some of my, if you want to call it success, or is always trying to prove the proverbial them wrong. I don't know. It probably a combination of all of it. Wanting to find stability, wanting to be better than where I came from, wanting to prove the proverbial them that could care less, that they're wrong. I don't know, but but as far as giving back, sometimes we can't fix ourselves, and sometimes the best thing we can do is help another person, and that's healing and that's therapeutical. I believe that. I'm part of a group called, this is this started about 12 or 13 years ago in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a group called F3, and it stands for Fitness, Fellowship, and Faith. All it was some guys that um, wanted to do something different. I think they were military guys, and they realized that out of the military that they just didn't have the camaraderie. They weren't around guys every single day, and life was just getting that. I think it's called the sad clown syndrome or something. And so they started working out outside and just meeting every morning. They had some rules. The rules is you had to be a guy. There is a group called FIA for females, but you had to be a guy. You didn't have to believe in Jesus or Christianity, but you just had to think you needed to at least be on the path of thinking there is a higher power out there. And it was always outdoors, and the only time you ever stop it is for lightning, no matter whether it's rain or whatever. And so anyway, that man took off. That started one little group of guys outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, and you can look it up. It's called F3 and letter F, number three, and it's all over the world now. It's in different countries. Just about any town you're near, it's going to have one. Like I've had to travel to different countries, Phoenix, Arizona, Texas, and I can be going there and I can look at where a workout is, and I can just go join that group for that day, wherever their workout is, and it's always outdoors, body weight type stuff. Really good thing. But anyway, just to explain that, the group that I'm a part of is called F3 Washington for Washington, North Carolina. And every year we hold a 5K, 10K event with a free community breakfast. And we do that. All the proceeds through sponsorships we give to recovery centers, men's recovery centers. Our focus is men's health, men's recovery centers. And we give that money to Christian based organizations. One is called Dare Challenge on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Another one is Bethel Missions of Mercy in the mountains of North Carolina. I think it's Lenore. But we do that. We give to those organizations because they're free. Not a big part of it is the Christian aspect. I believe in Jesus Christ, but the other thing is those entities are free to men. So you can be in Wyoming and you can say, I got a drug problem. You can call their challenge in Outer Banks and they'll say, if they got a bed, they'll be like, you just need to get here and we'll take you. They have about a 60 some percent success rate versus state and federal run recovery centers. And so we give money every year, and every year we've been blessed. This is coming up on our fourth year. We do it Easter Saturday every single year, and we've been able to donate 20 grand each year. We've raised a little over $80,000. Some of that money's gone to some local, like if you've ever heard of the AA meetings, Celebrate Recovery.
Hmm.
stuff like that. We also donate to those as well. But yes, is am I do me and the guys in this group, they put a lot of effort in it. I think we get just as much out of it as what we put in, probably more. It's probably more therapeutical to us. It's not to be goody two shoes or look at us. We don't announce who we are. We don't, put it out there a whole lot. So, you know, but right now, if you are sitting inside of a house and you are thinking the world's coming to an end, and I would tell you, you'd probably be surprised at how much you would get out of going over to help an elderly person that has a hard time cooking or doing something in their yard, or anything, volunteering somewhere at a food bank or a homeless shelter. I mean, go somewhere where there is the potential to see people actually have it worse than you. It doesn't get much worse than sleeping on concrete out in the cold. You can walk up to a homeless person and ask them, do they need anything? There's things you can do, and I think that is probably one of the most powerful healers, of people that are going through their own crap, to start lifting themselves up some.
Well, I wanted to let you know somebody wrote integrity versus despair, ripen versus rotten. And they were talking about that before. And when you were sharing this, I was thinking in my head, like there's the gratitude journal, there is the when people volunteer, about what they actually really get back. Is it intrinsic payment? Is it actually something giving to themselves, but or getting from it? When I look at it, is so in 2020, my father, he was deathly ill, and my dad was battling with cancer for a while. He had COPD. He was like, they had a hospital bed inside my mom's house. And I remember picking him up off of the bed. And th- this is a long winded, I'm going to tell you why I'm getting here. I pick him up off the bed and I put him onto a gurney when EMTs come into the house. And mind you, my head's still not right. I'm just like, okay, cool. I'm going through this. And then like right before I left to drive my sister to Colorado to live with me over there, so she had a little bit more opportunity. It was I went and saw my dad in the hospital, and the last time I saw one of my buddies overseas alive, they were in the hospital and they were behind this glass and they had tubes in them. And when I saw my dad, is during COVID, with behind plexiglass. I had to wear this whole suit, and I'm over here like didn't realize it, and it was actually really, really bugging me. And I didn't know how to actually articulate the words. And I started doing some stuff with Team Rubicon. And Team Rubicon, you probably have heard of them. They go out, they
Yeah.
do disaster responses.
Yep.
And when I started to do it, I started to be around people that cared, people that actually wanted the world to be better. And when I was allowed myself to have that ability to connect with these people, it started to change that narrative, the internal narrative of how I see the world. And when you go out there and you volunteer, you help out the old lady, you do these little things, you're being the change in the world that you want to see.
Yep.
Like people paraphrase Gandhi, say, be the change in the world you want to see. I really do believe in the fact of if you really want to start changing your lens, you have to start doing a little bit of the work to re-narrate it.
Man, another. I'm all about quotes, but I don't know, just kind of gravitate to them, I guess. But Ronald Reagan famously said, he said, "No one can help everyone, but everyone can help someone," and that's true. Everybody, we can't change the whole world, but how great would this world be if everybody woke up tomorrow and said, "Hey, I'm going to go do something for this one person." I mean, my God, at the change that would be. You get so much out of doing for others. And I would say, like with your team Rubicon and going out and volunteer, most of those people are people that come from a little rougher environments because they see the need. If you've grown up your whole life and never seen nothing but the land of castles and princesses, there's a good chance that you don't think the world needs to change at all. So you're probably not out there volunteering. You're probably not helping the person beside you, but you'll probably be very surprised at how like-minded of people you are putting yourself around, and that could benefit. Not that you're doing it to benefit yourself. I wouldn't go into it with that mindset, but I think you'll be shocked at how much it does for you.
It does. It actually definitely does change it. And I want to be respectful of your time. I know it's about 10 o'clock your time right now, and the questions I'll have, and I'll throw them out there to you,
Okay.
is like obviously when you start reading or writing your book, and when you probably reread it, it probably started changing the narratives. But I know you touched on it before about the woman or the girl or the boy going to bed with the abusive family.
Mhm.
When you were to say strip down the book into, let's just say, about 50 words, what do you think that a person will get out of it when they have a chance to read your thoughts, your emotions, your vulnerability? Wh- yeah.
Yeah. Um, I could probably go all over the place with it. I think the biggest thing is that I think for specific people, I think when the right person reads that, and when I'll say the right person, I think meaning that that person that is in those bad situations or has grown up in a bad situation, or at least is at least close to it. I think they'll say the book is very raw. It's extremely honest, and I think that people will say, "Crap, I'm not alone." You know, this person's talking about the damn path across the front yard to a window, and you could see that and tell that they're selling drugs out of that window. This guy's talking about, you know, walking inside of houses and seeing tinfoil all over the place and knowing that they're, you know, selling crack in the house. You know, this person is talking about, you know, somebody holding a 45 and committing suicide. I mean, it's a raw book. I mean, one of the reviewers that read it from, I think Goodreads, even, you know, give a 5-star review, give a whole page on how much they thought of the book, but give a disclaimer, you know, of there as, you know, traumatic events and stuff. I think that the biggest thing I feel like people will get is, hey, I'm not alone. There's other people out there like me, and I think it may provide some hope as far as, you know, I can, if I'm willing to work hard enough, you know, I can make a change, no matter where I'm starting from. I mean, that's my hopes. I hope that people can read it, see they're not alone, know that change is possible, and maybe it'll give somebody, if it gives one person the drive to make a better decision tomorrow, then all my efforts and me airing all my damn dirty laundry, you know, was worth every penny, everything that was done is worth it. So that's my hopes with the book. It's a short read. All the money, not that there's much, but what money does come from it does go to charity. And also, if there's anybody listening that has a special needs kid, or is in a home where they're a caretaker of somebody that has mental illness or something, I think they'll get a lot out of reading the book too. Not a There's no ABCD checklist on how to get through life, but at the same time, it will say, you know, hey, I'm not alone. There's somebody else going through the same stuff, and they were able to navigate through life while going through it. My life's not over, so you know, there may be another book coming out about me when it's a total train wreck. I don't know.
Somebody else wrote this says, "Save one life, you save the world," and it's there's a really cool thing about that. It's that person that is the whole world. That one person to themselves that is the whole world to what's happening. And I struggle with the because I don't have kids, and I think about the immortality complex. There was a really great book. It's called The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins, or the Red Chemistry, and it really breaks it down to the cellular level about what we're giving to the world.
Mhm.
And when I think about this, it's what is the resources that we want to give, and what is it do we want that to grow, and how do we want to heal? And I appreciate the fact that you came on to the podcast to talk about this. And I know we didn't get too depth into the book, and I really hope the listeners do pick it up. It's called Bull Shark. And Brian, it's just a pleasure to talk with you, man. You're a very real person. I love the fact that your faith guides you, and that you're also understanding, and you continuously try to give back to other people that might not have had the outs that you had.
Mm. Well, you know, the faith. I'm in Eastern North Carolina. I mean, even people that say that they're here, even people that say they're atheists, they pray before they eat. It's just, it's just is you're in the Bible Belt. Faith is I've turned away from it many many times in my life. Kind of always been back there in the back burner, but and I'm not the perfect Christian, and that's even wrong to even say it like that. But I had an uncle one time, and he told me, we were talking about faith, and we were talking about believing in God and how hard it is sometimes, and how hard it is to have faith all the time and rationalize with the teachings of the Bible. And he said, "Man," he said, "if you believe in God and you die and you go to heaven, great, everything worked out." He said, "If you die and nothing happens," he said, "at least it helped you through this life." And there's a lot of, that might be a little simplistic view, but there's a lot of truth in that. And there's you are going to your listeners, me. I'm not done by no means. Suffering's coming. Suffering is coming in life. You can count on that. You can't count on much, but I can tell you, I don't care if you are the richest person on the planet and you look on Facebook, it looks like you got it all put together. Something's coming. And when it comes to suffering and things that you're going to encounter in life, you can't go on Amazon and get that click that's going to get you out of that.
Hmm.
There's not any answer. Google doesn't have an answer for that. AI can try all it wants. It just doesn't happen. And something's got to come from somewhere else to give you that to give you that will to make it through it, and to make it through it with some type of class and not fall to pieces. And I hadn't seen it in Walmart, but I have seen it when it comes to Jesus Christ and God. And whether that you can look at that, hey, just blind faith, here goes a guy talking about believing in God. Fine. Take a selfish view of it. Take a selfish view that I'm doing this for my benefit because it helps me get through the night, because it helps me not pull the trigger tomorrow, because it helps me stay away from, that bag of, that bag of cocaine. Whatever your reason is for it, just don't turn your back on it. Don't turn your back on it.
Well, I appreciate that, Brian. And just to close it out, do you have any other words for people that are listening, and where could they also pick up your book?
The book's a side note. It's on Amazon. It's called Bull Shark. It's the story of a dropout turned doctor. Um, you can be there's also a Spanish version. It is very very. I'll give you a little disclaimer. You have to read the whole book to hear the whole reason of why it's called Bull Shark. But in North Carolina, we have there's bull sharks all around the world, but we have bull sharks all over the place here. And bull sharks, you can be in a small creek, river, 60 miles from the ocean in a freshwater river, and a bull shark can pop up because the bull sharks are the only animal out there, fish, that can survive in salt and fresh water. So that's a little hint as to why it's called bull shark. And we have a lot of them here. But and if anything, if anybody gets out of my talk, reading this book or whatever, you're not alone. You're the only person standing in your way, no matter how bad you think you got it. And there's always somebody that's got it worse than you. The helping others is a great path to help yourself. and at least get you out of the mind fog that you may currently be in at the time. If it doesn't do anything but just lift that cloud for just a little while, and you can do anything that you want to do. You are the change inside yourself to help you out of the situation that you're in. It's not going to be easy, but you can do it. And God knows I don't know how people can reach out to me. There is a website, Bull Shark. You can send emails through that. But if anybody needs to talk, if anybody needs anything from me or find out more about me or the F3 organization, I think F3 is a great thing for guys to get you out of your house, to get you around other people, to create some friends and stuff for you. It's a fitness thing, but fitness is like the total back burner when it comes to F3. It's really about the camaraderie and being around other people. Um, you know, I'll do whatever I can for anybody if you reach out, and that's in my capabilities.
Well, Brian, Dave, and Chelsea said thank you so much. They were listening pretty much throughout the whole time, and we have had people come on and off that were listening. Just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me.
Yeah,
Brian, aka Dr. Ward, I appreciate it.
yeah. Well, man, look, anytime, if there's any, if you want to talk again at some point in time, always open to you. Appreciate what you're doing. You're the tip of the spear, man. I mean, to be putting this together, to taking your time to set up a podcast, to do all the outreach, to try to find people like me and people better than me, to help when it comes to mental illness, when it comes to drug addiction, when it comes to why are we like this, and what can be done about it. You're it, man. Thank you so much for what you do. Appreciate your service. Anybody that was listening today, thank you for taking the time to listen to a screw up. And any, and like I said, anytime.
Well, thank you, Brian.